nervous because I'm here now.
Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and we are feeling a little bit like breaking news, during the free agency period of the NBA when all the guys are on their phones, or even during the NFL, every hour something's breaking, something's changing. Of course, the Baltimore Ravens, things have changed, and we're going to get into that. I'll let Glenn give you guys the new news, which unfortunately at this point is negative. But on a positive note, before we get into that, I want to give a huge shout out to our new patron. We're always grateful for our patrons, our supporters. And if you guys are looking to support us or interact more with the show, check out our link in the comments below. But shout out to Daryan Verplog. Really grateful for him being a patron and look forward to his contributions to the show. But without any further ado, Glenn, why don't you fill us in with the news? What's going on and what can we expect?
Yeah, so the newest name added to the COVID-19 list is tight end Mark Andrews, who is obviously has a history. He is a type 1 diabetic, I believe. So
Yep.
He definitely has one of those underlying health issues that makes the COVID virus more dangerous. Thoughts and prayers to go out to Mark Andrews. That's something I think we haven't touched on enough, Jimmy, is that Calais Campbell came out and said that, look, this virus is no joke. It's kicking my butt. And I know he has asthma, but this is also a man who is in incredible shape, much better shape than most of the country, certainly much better shape than my fat butt. So if it's kicking his butt, then it's something to take very seriously. So first and foremost, we just want to, hope that these players get back to full strength and that they are left with no, residual effects from this virus and that they are able to bounce back and get back to full strength. That's the first thing, because they are, of course, people first and players, I guess, somewhere down that list, but definitely people first. So that list, let me just give you the most updated list and I'll run through it quickly. I'll start with the starters and end with the reserves and backups. So quarterback Lamar Jackson, running back J.K. Dobbins, running back Mark Ingram, tight end Mark Andrews, center Patrick McCarry, center Matt Skura, fullback and D tackle Pat Ricard, D tackle Brandon Williams, D lineman Calais Campbell, linebacker Matt Judon, linebacker Pernell McPhee, linebacker Jalen Ferguson, offensive lineman DJ Fluker, long snapper Morgan Cox, and defensive tackle Justin Matabike. And then as far as the reserves and backups, quarterback Trace McSorley, defensive lineman Jihad Ward, defensive lineman Broderick Washington, cornerback Khalil Dorsey, cornerback Tavon Young, cornerback Iman Marshall, and guard/tackle Will Holden. So the list is long, Jimbo. It's up to 22 players. And really there's no signs that this is the end of the list. It's at 22 now, but we could wake up to more tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a huge concern. And then at this point as well, I believe the Steelers have 4 players on the COVID list and 1 staffer. And just like you mentioned, shout out to James Conner as well. Of course, had cancer previously, and we hope him well wishes as well, among the other players. But like Glenn noted, underlying previous health issues are heightened concern. But the other thing I want to mention too is it just came out that the Saints were fined $500,000 and a 7th round pick for breaking protocol in a locker room, an isolated incident that of course was all over social media when they were dancing after they destroyed Tom Brady's Bucks. Mm-hmm. And so that was interesting to me because I've talked a lot about precedents on the show, how the Titans were only fined $350,000 and the who had a pick taken away?
The Raiders, was it?
The Raiders had a 6th round pick taken away, but now we see a team that's had both a larger fine, a lower round draft pick. But I'm just going to go out on a ledge and say we will have the largest fine and we will have the highest draft pick.
Yes.
In the history that is punishments from COVID-19. So look out for that in the future. The other thing I want to mention before we talked about like implications moving forward is, we're kind of changing the conversation here because before it was more about what's this game going to look like? At this point, I don't think that there's a way this game is played. I mean, we have 23 people on the list. Of those people, I think there are 18 contributing players or more. Yeah, there's 5 out. There's 5 out that are that are on the reserve list. There's 18 that are contributing players. So I don't even know if we have enough bodies at this point to suit up a team. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen. So I don't know what it will take for the NFL to finally throw up the white flag and say, look, we're doing a week 18. But if they do that, what will that look like, Glenn? If they decide this game is getting pushed, what does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So they did say before the season started that there would be a possibility of adding an extra week if it was necessary. But I wanted to point out a few things that go along with that week 18 scenario, and it is the league would only likely play games that decided in or out of the playoffs, so it had to have a significant impact on the playoff picture. And by saying that, I mean if there was a game that simply decided seeding but not who's in and who's out, then the NFL would elect not to play it. So they're not concerned whether you're the 5th seed or the 7th seed. They want to know who's in and who's out. And if a game does not go into deciding that, then it doesn't look like they're willing to go into that week 18 unless it's a who's in and who's out. That also, it said that week 18 could also not be the extent of the delays. They could add even a week 19 if it was necessary, again, to determine who's in and who's out, not to determine seeding or placement. So there's still a lot that they could. Now, I think that it makes all the sense in the world to postpone, maybe not the entire slate of games, but at least a good portion of it. When you look around the league, this outbreak isn't just a Ravens Steelers issue. I mean, the Broncos right now have 0 quarterbacks on their roster right now that are able to play in this upcoming game. They actually had a motion denied by the league to have their quarterback coach suit up and play. And I'm sure John Elway, if necessary, might have a couple throws left in him, but they're not going to let him do that. Now, I saw a meme today that's funny that the New York Mets have more quarterbacks on their roster right now than the Denver Broncos because, of course, they have Tim Tebow. So, yeah, it is interesting, but I think it makes all the sense in the world that you got to postpone these games because, look, the Steelers have shown that they're not out of their outbreak. We haven't seen the extent of their outbreak, obviously. And we know that the Ravens, we haven't seen the extent of theirs yet. They still have not determined whether or not they're going to have another positive test or a group of positive tests tomorrow. So I don't know how they play this game, Jimmy, but I do find it interesting if you looked at the comments right before the season started. John was asked about the coronavirus protocols and stuff in place. And I find it interesting because his quote was, if you want to rank them, we are in the top 5. I'll tell you that across the country. We're right up there with anybody. We get tested every day and we are wearing masks everywhere. Well, that may have been the case for him, but that was not the case for everyone in the organization, as we later found out with the strength and conditioning coach being shown to be demonstrating some reckless behavior, not wearing his mask everywhere. I mean, look, it shows. It makes sense. The head strength and conditioning coach typically works with probably everyone on the team. I'm sure he goes around the weight room and has moments with all of them. So it makes sense that the outbreak is pretty much across the board everywhere on the team because it seems like he was the source. So, yeah, I agree with you, Jimmy. Heavy fines, and I think a high draft pick will be stripped from the Ravens, unfortunately. And I think it's a lot of it just because of that one guy, that strength and conditioning coach, Steve Saunders, I believe is his name.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I said this before about Mark, but he's definitely a high pollinator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like based on his role, he's a high energy,
Mark Ingram, you mean? Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, Mark Ingram. I referred to him as a social butterfly. I'm sure that Steve Saunders is the same in the weight room. He's in his rhythm, in his environment. He's getting in guys' faces. I'm sure he does a lot of yelling, a lot of pumping up.
Yep.
You're probably getting spit all over your face, but you're not moving because you don't want to be rude. Been there before with plenty of coaches and it sucks, but now with COVID, it means a lot more. And so it's a really unfortunate situation. But so let me ask you this. Do you foresee him getting fired? Or do you foresee the Ravens, they did some internal disciplining, and in hopes of that making, having the league come down on them less hard, saying, it's like when you're a little kid and you already try and right the wrong before you tell your parents what you did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I already
they
fixed
tried.
it.
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think you mentioned before the show that the Ravens had a rash of seasons where injuries really derailed their entire season, and then when they brought in Steve, he seemed to really right the ship from that standpoint. We had a lot less of those, you know,
Soft tissue
yeah,
issues.
the soft tissue issues went away, and really, even those major knee injuries that we saw league wide really went down here. But and I never like to call for a guy's job. I mean, especially
Right.
nowadays. I mean, it's insane out there. But here's the thing with him is they call he if he was the sole source of this outbreak throughout the Ravens locker room, think about what he's cost not just the Ravens but the NFL. I mean, how much money did they lose by canceling or postponing that Thursday night Thanksgiving game? That's millions and millions of dollars taken away from just the NFL. Then you talk about the Ravens. They're about to be fined. We anticipate the biggest fine since this COVID situation, plus $500,000 fine is what we're anticipating. We're
Yeah.
anticipating a draft pick being removed that's at least a 6th round pick or higher. That's massive, especially for an organization that values their draft picks the way the Ravens do. I don't know if they fire him for sure, but if he's not fired, I mean, he would have to go into a more intensive protocol than the rest of the team, I would say. I mean, this guy, I better not see him without a mask. I better not. I mean, there would have to be a litany of punishments, of repercussions if he were to keep his job, and like I said, a heightened protocol for him individually if he is to be
Right.
allowed back in this season. But man, I would not be surprised at all if he is fired.
Yeah, and I wonder what the league can do there if they can force the hand of the Ravens. Or I wonder what the underlying rules are there behind the punishments of breaking protocol. I don't know if the league has the ability to do that or not, but that will be something interesting we will see moving forward. Everything is touch and go here with COVID because it's all new for everyone and all unique to the entire league, the entire world. So yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Really unfortunate we've had 5 consecutive days now of at least one positive test.
Yeah.
But we're going to keep hoping these guys get healthy, hoping that we can have this game whether it's Tuesday or week 18, and that the season can move forward because it's not looking great right now for the entire league, like you mentioned as a whole.
But let's just say
So
this because I think there's been growing movement that I see a lot of comments in the comment section that the NFL is just going to cancel it. It's going to be shut down
yeah,
by Christmas. I don't see that happening because of the fact that they have still not used the week 18 and week 19 that they have been prepared to use. So until
right,
all other avenues are exhausted, I'm not ready to make claims that the NFL is going to cancel the rest of the season when they still have
right.
yet to even exhaust all of their admitted avenues of resolving the situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Who knows? We could see a Super Bowl full of backups. You just never know. But I
Yeah,
guess at the end of the day, the question is, are you entertained? Right?
exactly. And I think football, even if it's not played at the highest level, I mean, we see how good is how are the ratings for college? That's clearly not played at the highest level because the NFL is, but they do
Right.
pretty good there as well. And we all know backups in the NFL are stars or were stars in college. So let's not act like even though the product wouldn't be up to the typical par, it's still a pretty darn good product. But honestly, I wanted to get one last question from you, Jimmy.
Yeah.
If they say they get through this whole season and it's kind of similar how what we're seeing now. We're seeing lots of backups. We're seeing lots of contributions from players that we're not used to seeing. Would this season be? Would this champion have a huge asterisk next to their name, or would you consider it just like any other championship?
This one was tough because I was talking to somebody about this, and they said, well, every year is a battle of attrition. Every year there's injuries, and this is no different. And I was like, yeah, that's true, but this isn't an injury. This is a virus, right? There's to me, two different classifications here. So to me, yeah, I think there would be an asterisk next to that the champions name, certainly because it's different with the NBA where I think, and we've talked about this before, that was really high quality basketball based on the environment that the NBA built. I realize the NFL has a different scenario and that would be much more difficult, but maybe the NFL should consider doing something like that for the playoffs only. To
that could be interesting because the player
you
then you're
know,
talking about a much similar group of people, as far as numbers.
right, absolutely. Yeah, you got a much more manageable group, and having them together, all those football players in one place, that could be some really high quality football. And hopefully it stays on the field.
Yeah, I think you're right because I think that in the in the NBA, it did add to the intensity because they weren't going home to they were going and having dinner and they were looking over, at the next table and guess who's over there? The Clippers are over
Yeah.
there. And if you're sitting there as the Lakers. So I think it definitely ratcheted up the intensity and obviously they were able to control any outbreaks. There was virtually none in the NFL or in the NBA. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they get through this season because man, it's not looking good right now. But let us know what you guys think.
Yeah.
Does the game get played on Tuesday? Do they move it back to a week 18? What do you think the final result is? And yeah, I mean, just give us your opinion, and we'll talk soon. All right.
See ya.